Well, welcome to Unit 2. Want to get us off to a good start with this. So I've got a few highlights of some key items I want to cover from the content this week and give you a little overview of our assignments just to make sure we're all on the same page. So I need to get my screen working here so I can share those slides, and I'll also post a copy of the slides with that. So let me just get these open and running. Except now I need to get my share screen. Give me just a second here. Oh, great. It tells me that I am sharing my slides screen with you, so that's good news. Unit 2 focuses on the external environment and really gives us some really good tools for how to do that. So get moving forward with those. Here we go. There we go. So if you recall from Unit 1, we talked about strategy. Strategy is about the future, about how we'll position our company 3 years, 5 years down the road to ensure that we have sustainable profits and market share and really are heading towards being successful. So remember we talked about the fit test, and the fit test was about how well our strategic vision we've developed, how well it fits the internal and the external environment. So that's what's happening as we move into Unit 2. We're going to look specifically at the external environment. And then we move over to Unit 3, we'll focus specifically on the internal environment. So get your head in this correctly. When we're looking at the external environment, we're really trying to assess the attractiveness of the industry and how successful we're going to be at profit and market share going forward in that competitive environment. And then we may really like or dislike our evaluation of that competitive environment. And then we need to determine whether we can choose a strategy that will ensure that we are effective in that environment, or if we just need to not move into that industry. Maybe there's some other place we should be investing, other places we should be opening. So when we talk about external environment, that could be the greater industry like the iPhone industry, which is really global, or we could look at the national iPhone industry, or we could look at something much more local like our regional marketplace. If we were opening a retail location or something like that, we might even look at something very small, like the potentially opening our latest location in a certain town versus another town. We could use these same evaluation tools to really determine whether that's a location, a specific geography that we're going to be successful in or not. So these tools are kind of scalable, which I really like. We'll move on to this, and just to show you kind of what that list of the tools, it's kind of a toolbox it's going to prepare for us. Pestle, Porter's 5 Forces, which is kind of my go-to. I've used in several different instances. ValueNet, Driving Forces, Strategic Groups Map, and SOAR. And what you should take away from this, I'm going to focus on just a couple of them to give you some examples and show you how they work. You can dive into the details in the actual chapter readings to get all of the nitty-gritty details on these, but I want to help you understand how they work and why we would choose to use these. One thing to keep in mind is this is not, they're not mutually exclusive. So it isn't that you do pick one and my default is Porter's 5 Forces, but also you really should be doing multiple ones that are appropriate for whatever you're evaluating. And because each one has different things it emphasizes. So one alone does not do all evaluations. And it's nice to have multiple ones. And then you can look more collectively at your decision-making process in whether we move forward in this environment or whether we choose a different strategy for that environment. So it's not a pick one bullet. It's really to pick a set of these 3 or 4 of them to use in your analysis. I will, give you a spoiler alert when it comes to our assignments this week, our deliverables. It's really going to focus on just using a single one of these tools. You don't have to use multiple ones. So let me touch on pesto because it's rather an interesting one, especially what's currently going on in the United States. So pesto focuses on the macro environment, so a very holistic kind of approach. This is the image of it right out of the text, which I think really paints a fairly clear picture of this. We're really going to focus on that outer ring, and I'll bring up the kind of drill downs. So over on the left side, you'll see political factors. So how are political factors influencing the current state of our macro environment? And certainly is what we're dealing with here in the United States in this particular period. A lot of turmoil, a lot of unknowns, a lot of executive orders coming out of DC, a lot of uh, 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 federal agencies being closed and combined and things moving. So this can have a significant impact on a company's decision of when to move forward. So these kind of evaluations can also affect timing. We may look and say, well, I really like that industry and I really can see us expanding there, but not right now. We're going to wait 2 years and we'll reevaluate. So political factors, economic factors. Is the country in recession? Is the global economy in recession? Is it on the edge of recession? Is it booming? What is the condition? Because again, this could affect timing, and it might create a great opportunity. Even when the economy is doing poorly, there are certain products and certain services that sell really well. So economic conditions aren't necessarily always a bad thing, but Pesto will tell us that we really need to evaluate and have an assessment of what the current economic atmosphere is. Sociocultural factors are what people believe about a certain service or product. So people's opinions change, and this varies by country, varies by region, varies by state. So we want to look very carefully at that. But there's opinions right now, and one of them I'm starting to see more and more of is bottled water. We're looking at bottled water as not a good thing, whereas 15 or 20 years ago, bottled water was becoming more and more popular because people felt like drinking bottled water was a higher quality product than what we would get through the tap. And certainly in other countries, drinking tap water isn't even a feasibility because of the health aspects of it. But now bottled water, because of the environmental impact of the bottles themselves, bottled water is being frowned upon. And so we want to be using reusable containers. So if I was Aquafina and I was in the bottled water business, I might not be expanding right now, unless I have some product that's going to somehow meet that sociocultural, that consumer belief that they don't want to be creating more recycled materials. So socio and lots of opinions change, whether I want to go to the theater and see a movie or whether I'm going to wait until it's released on Netflix. All kinds of things change in the consumer mind, and that's where sociocultural factors come in. Environmental factors, that really means the natural environment. So issues about the availability of raw materials, the sensitivity to, again, the recycling, the waste that comes from some products that might also include technology products, where folks are a little more reluctant to just exchange their iPhone 16 for the next iPhone 17 because they know what kind of high value materials go into it, what kind of labor gets put into it. And a lot of folks are feeling like, no, I want to make my iPhone last longer. So I'm not going to just immediately upgrade. I'm going to get the battery replaced in my existing one. I'm going to get the screen repaired in my existing one. I'm going to get a few more years out of this phone. So people's sensitivity to environmental factors, that can even include environmental factors such as natural disasters and how those type of things might influence where we can produce products, what the riskiness of having manufacturing done in places that are subject to tsunamis. So all kinds of different environmental, natural type considerations are made here. Legal and regulatory conditions, these can work in our favor or against us, and that's where there might be licensing required, or there might be patents involved and things like that that might either keep us out of competition, or it might allow us into an industry but prevent others from coming in, which would really work to our benefit. So are there laws in place that might restrict us? And even as far as I'm sure you're familiar with the Sherman Antitrust Act, that could come into play where entering a certain market might create an unfair competitive advantage that would fall under the Sherman antitrust, and I might not be allowed to even move into that industry. Other item that really comes up, I think is interesting to watch for in the text is a more recent realization that under this pestle model, we really didn't address things that they call societal shocks. And after experiencing COVID, we have a much more awareness that things can go horribly wrong, horribly fast. That can include terrorism attacks, wars breaking out. We've seen everything in the last 10 years, and they're not really accounted for directly in this. And so the question with societal shocks is for an organization to consider, if I move into this industry as a competitor and I open that new location or I introduce that new product, do I have the resilience to survive a societal shock? Or am I going to be at such risk that if something like that occurs, it'll put me out of business? And we saw that happen in many, many cases going through COVID. So societal shocks it's a nice new kind of adjustment to the pestle model that's been around for quite a long time. Porter's Five Forces, again, as I mentioned, has kind of been my go-to. Michael Porter is a famous business management consultant, teacher, researcher out of, I believe, Harvard. He's been around a long time, done a lot of incredible work. And one of those is this five forces model that he proposes is a really good way to evaluate the profit potential for an industry. So, if I had $80 million to invest in something, should I go into the iPhone industry? Should I go into the car manufacturing industry? So this is a very high level review, but as I kind of lay it out, I think you'll see that you can apply it in a lot of different contexts. But the question behind it is always, are the conditions in this market or this environment such that I'm going to be able to continue making a profit? Or is it going to be something where I may open there and in 3 years I'll be driven out of the market, or the market will become so unprofitable that I will want to exit? So it's not a market I want to participate in. So he breaks these five forces out really, I think, in a really clean way. Um, our homework assignment is going to draw on this, so do take a closer look at this. So one of the things he says that you should consider is the presence of substitutes. So if I'm going to open a coffee shop and sell coffee in this market, what are the substitutes? Could people go to other things? Oh, there's a soda machine down the block. They could go there instead of the coffee. So it's other products that could be used instead of what I'm selling. So maybe there's water available. Maybe there's water fountains located all over town. So there's lots of ways for people to get beverages. Are they really going to come to my coffee shop? So the availability of alternatives. If we're looking at opening a car manufacturer or a car dealership, well, do people use scooters? Do people walk? Do people use bicycles in this community? So what are the substitutes, other things other than the type of product I'm selling? Which is a little different because we often look at direct competitors and we think about, well, who else is going to be selling coffee? And Porter says, well, don't forget about the other things that people could use to satisfy that need other than what you have. So if I'm opening a movie theater, well, you better be thinking about Netflix and HBO and cable and other things that people might use, and even other entertainment things. So maybe they won't go to my theater, they'll go to live theater, or they'll go to sporting events to fill that entertainment needs. So you really got to think much more broadly about what potential substitutes there could be to your offering. Suppliers. This is a little different angle, but the question that Porter asks is, how much power do suppliers have in this relationship? So I'll stay with coffee for a minute and say, well, who are my primary suppliers? I'm going to need cups. I'm going to need coffee beans. I'm going to need sugar and condiments. I'm going to need electricity. I'm going to need a building. Um, so a whole list of inputs I'm going to need in order to sell coffee. And what Porter's asking is, well, how much power do the suppliers have? Because if the suppliers have more power than you have, then they can raise the prices. And if you remember from module 1, we talked about profit equals price minus cost. Suppliers control the cost you pay. So if they increase their costs, if you open your store and you're buying coffee and everything's going great, and all of a sudden your suppliers go, hey, coffee prices are going up 80%. Well, if I can't go someplace else and get my coffee, then my profit's gone. So he's questioning, are there alternate suppliers? Is there competition in the supplier market? Or are you going to be stuck? And suddenly you open this store and you get all this business going, you do all this advertising, and suddenly the suppliers jack up the cost of the products that you're selling, you won't be able to make any profit and you'll go out of business. So it's supplier power. Similarly, the other side of the equation, buyer power, which in most retail situations, the buyers really don't have much power. I set the coffee price and I say my coffee is going to be $4 a cup, $5 a cup, $6 a cup, like over at Starbucks. Buyers can either come in and pay that or they don't come. So it isn't like the buyers can come in and negotiate and say, well, I'm thinking I want that venti coffee, but I'm thinking 350, not 4. No negotiating power. There's the price. It's on the wall. That's what you pay. There are other items where buyers do have negotiating power, maybe with new car sales where you actually go in and negotiate your price. If you go on eBay and buy things, the buyer has a lot of control over the pricing of their product. And again, the concern from Porter is profit equals price minus cost. And if buyers can come in and drive their price down, then your profit's gone. So he's saying, be careful. And there's not a lot of situations where buyers have power these days, but it always needs to be considered. This is another big one, potential new entrants. So I'll stay with my coffee example. If I open my coffee shop in this cute little town and I'm doing great and I'm building on my business, and suddenly 3 other people open coffee shops in that same town, the market share gets spread by more providers and I potentially lose my chance to make money. I don't have enough customers. So what's going to prevent new entrants from entering your space? It may be because you've got the best location, you're on the town square, you're in this great little corner shop. Maybe you've got a loyalty program, so the buyers, your customers aren't going to go to that other new guy. You've got them, they love you. You've got some kind of a unique offering that's going to prevent, what do we call that, buyer exit or buyer, what's it called, cost of changing. It's like kind of like you have your cell phone plan and you're with Verizon, but T-Mobile's got something really cool. What prevents you from going over to T-Mobile? Oh, you're on a long contract. You can't get out of your contract, or you can't get the phone you want, or your number won't be transferred. So what's going to prevent your buyers from drifting to these new entrants? The other part of this is, well, maybe there's something that'll prevent new entrants from even coming in, period. So are there laws in place? Are there zoning regulations? Is there licensing that there can only be so many coffee shops in this town and you have to be approved by the town zoning board in order to open another one? What's going to protect you from being run out of business by new entrants coming in? Finally, competitive rivalry. So this is where it finally talks about the competitors in your space. So if I move into my new coffee shop in, let's say, Westfield, just, a few miles away, cute little town, and there's only 2 other coffee shops, and I get a great location, so I'm feeling like I'm going to do okay. Competitive rivalry asks the question, well, how aggressive are the other competitors in your space? So if I open up, are the other competitors going to be scared and they're all of a sudden going to start coupons and price reductions and loyalty programs and marketing campaigns. And that's competitive rivalry. If they're just going to stay quiet and we'll all just operate in this town and we've each got our own thing going, we all can make money. But if we start a price war or we start some type of competitive action, then we're each going to respond to that. If you remember from your economics training, game theory. This is game theory. This is what's going to be the competitive action of my competitor that's going to potentially remove all the profit from the business or remove my market share, because I don't want a highly competitive market. I don't want to be spending a lot of money on advertising and worried about losing customers. And then he advertises and then I advertise and then I put out coupons and then they put out coupons and then I do a price reduction. It just gets, everybody loses profit. So the five forces are these five items, and they're kind of different and distinct, and we ask different questions in each one, but they do paint a pretty good picture of what's the potential that I can actually make money in the long term, sustainable 3, 5 years and beyond, sustainable profitability into the future. So Porter is very specific on that. A little highlight, and this came right out of our text, applying the five forces. So go through each of the five forces and start to identify, well, who are those suppliers? Who are the competitors? Who are the possible substitutes? Go through, put some names next to each one of those. And then do some type of rating. How strong is that presence? Does it really matter? Maybe it matters a little, maybe a 5-point scale. Well, suppliers don't have much power. It's a pain, but we could switch suppliers. So maybe that's a 3. Buyers don't have any power in this market. So maybe it's a 1, but maybe competitive rivalry is potentially very high. Maybe that's a 5. So kind of paint out a picture for each of the five forces and then rate each one to determine which ones are having the strongest influence on your decision. And then the question is, well, can we come up with a strategy that will allow us to be successful in that context, in that situation? So just again, just throwing these together, let's think about them a minute. So I'm opening an ice cream shop in a small town. Suppliers, what am I going to do? I need to buy ice cream. You can buy them from Edie's, you can buy it from Breyers, you can buy it from Jack and Jill. There's lots of suppliers of ice cream. So maybe the suppliers don't have a lot of influence. There's enough competition out there in the suppliers for ice cream that I can maybe get it anywhere. If I'm going to make my own ice cream, which is fine, that might be a distinguishing competitive advantage that I'm going to have. I'm going to have homemade ice cream. Well, then I have to source sugar and milk and other ingredients. But those are very generic ingredients. So again, my suppliers are not going to have a lot of power. And I might have a distinct competitive advantage. So that might be really cool. Let's go over to buyers. Buyers don't have a lot of power. They could go somewhere else, but essentially I put my ice cream up, I find a competitive price, I advertise that price, and the buyers really can't come in and negotiate and drive the price down. They can go elsewhere, and then I have to lower my price in order to get customers back. But the buyer power in the ice cream market is probably not that significant. So that's buyers, that's suppliers. Threats of new entrants. That's pretty bad in this case because they could pretty much, anybody could open an ice cream shop or an ice cream cart or an ice cream van. We could have a food truck that specializes in ice cream. He could pull up right in front of my ice cream shop and start selling ice cream out of a truck. So that threat of new entrants can be pretty scary. So I'm going to be thinking, I'm going to choose a different strategy. I'm not going to try to be the low-cost guy. I'm going to probably have to be a differentiator. I'm probably going to be broad-based market, but I'm going to go with high-quality homemade ice cream. Just thinking off the top of my head. Rivalry so let's go to substitutes. Lots of substitutes for ice cream, like not eating ice cream. Possibly there might be a pretzel shop down the street. There might be buy their own snacks over at the 7-Eleven or the Wawa. So there are lots of substitutes. There's lots of other places to get other type of items. So that is a problem for me. I'm going to have to really establish myself and have something that is maybe natural and healthy, if that's possible with ice cream. Something that's outstanding flavor and quality. Really have to differentiate myself so that people will want my product rather than going to Wawa and grabbing that pretzel wrapped in shrink wrap right by the counter. I really love this. And then rivalry within the industry. That's where what's the chances that are there other ice cream dealers in my town and are they comfortable? They're selling a little different products, so we're not going to get into a price war. Is it going to be okay? Is there only two of them, and maybe they've been there for 20 years and they're kind of old and they're not really active. They don't advertise. Maybe I can come in and swamp them and take the market. So that's just some examples on that. You have some fun with porters. Value net, I'm just going to mention because it adds a nuance. You're looking at this list, customers, suppliers, competitors. That sounds really familiar. Sounds a whole lot like Porter's Five Forces. But ValueNet throws in complementers, which is a little different perspective. And I encourage read that a little more closely. But complementers are firms in other industries that sell something that goes with my product. So if I sell iPhones, then the company that makes iPhone cases and iPhone accessories are complementers. And we actually work together, maybe not directly, but indirectly. And when I do good, they do good. And maybe my product sells better because people look and they go, I'm going to buy an iPhone because I can get really cool cases and I can get all these really cool accessories because it's an iPhone. And I can get all these cool apps because it's an iPhone. That's a complementer. And we kind of together make things work even better. So a little bit different. And also the competitors. I love the way ValueNet dives in deeper on competitors and looks at direct competitors, rivals, substitutors, new entrants, kind of all as a holistic, which is a little different than Porter's Five Forces. So ValueNet is really, really similar. It's doing a very similar type of evaluation as Five Forces, but it adds its complementers in, which I think could really be advantageous depending upon what your product or service is. Strategic group map, I want to mention just briefly because this tool, if you haven't used a 2x2 matrix in your MBA program, keep this kind of 2x2 matrix is always a good way to evaluate anything. And it's a good starting point. And so the 2x2 matrix, essentially, you have something important up the y-axis and you have something important across the x-axis, and then you determine where each person falls. And in this example, they've got a range of products offered. So do you offer just a single thing, like you see in the bottom right-hand corners, Omaha steaks? They only sell steaks, but I mean, I know in reality they sell loaded baked potatoes and they sell pork chops and they sell so, but very narrow product line as opposed to Uber Eats and DoorDash. You can get like anything, Instacart, Amazon Fresh. So each one can provides a different range. So depending upon how high, top to bottom, it appears, that tells me that it either have a very few offerings, which is Omaha Steaks, or Uber Eats, which you basically can get anything you want. Across the x-axis, that's the bottom, geographic delivery range, how wide of an area do they cover? And so Omaha Steaks, you can go online and order it for delivery anywhere in the country. Papa John's is a little less. You can't necessarily get it anywhere, but you can get it anywhere that there's a Papa John store. So that's why it's moved a little bit to the left. You've got to have a local outlet. You got to be within 5 miles of that local outlet. But when you come to delivery.com, you can pretty much get it anywhere. So the left to right determines either very focused local area only, very few outlets, to I can get it anywhere, anytime, anywhere. And what's also, I love this because this is an Excel bubble diagram. So if you ever want to make these, go in and look up. I've got a YouTube video out there on how to do a bubble diagram in Excel, and they're really cool. It comes out looking exactly like this. And the size of the bubble is a third measurement. So you got your Y measurement, you got your X measurement, and the size of the bubble is the amount of revenue driven by that group of companies. So it just helps you kind of get a visual picture of, if I'm going to enter this competitive space, where am I going to fit? Do I want to go head to head with Papa John's? Do I want to go head to head with Amazon Fresh? Or do I want to compete out in that left space where there aren't as many places? So that would, again, maybe be suggesting I want to go with a niche type strategy. I want to go with a niche differentiation strategy. Remember, there's 5 core strategies, generic strategies from Unit 1. Just a great model, but you can use any 3 factors to build these 2x2 matrices. And when you show these to people, I've often had people look and go, "Oh my gosh, now it makes sense. I see how it all fits." So I didn't want you to miss out on these. They're such a powerful tool to use, and you almost can't hire a consultant who won't come in and give you a 2x2 matrix. So just do the 2x2 matrix and save yourself about 10 grand. So take any questions. Feel free to send me questions through the chat and the messaging functions in Canvas. But kind of fun materials this week. I'm going to touch on what our assignments are. The discussion question this week has you use Porter's 5 forces and really evaluate all 5 of those in the context of the mid-range airline industry. So there's some really great guidelines in the chapter that gets even further into those 5 of what kind of questions you should answer. You can build those out pretty well, and then it asks you to make a kind of an overall assessment of which of the 5 forces is really strongest in that space. The assignment, the AS this week, is a competitive environment evaluation of the organic food industry. And that is very specific to Whole Foods, and it's also specific to the organic food industry. So there's 2 embedded resources, some information on Whole Foods and some information on the actual organic food industry. You need to look through both of those, and again, be putting together a Porter's 5 forces analysis of that situation, but you have much more time to work on that. And as always, we're going to have the regular assessment, which is a quiz on the assigned materials. So do put me back any clarifications you need, but should be in really good shape this week. I think the materials are really straightforward.